Today we are talking about Let's Go Brandon. Why was it said in a church? Should Christians say it? What does it even mean? Let's go. Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it looks like to truly be the church in today's culture.
Yes.
We did have an episode last Friday that was on Black Friday, but we recorded it a long time ago.
Yeah.
How was y'all's Thanksgiving?
Good.
It was good. So I had a friend who literally starting at like 7 a.m. that day, texted me pictures of everything he ate that day, all the way to like 10 p.m. at night.
Gross.
And that friend was Reverend A.B. Murch.
Yeah, sounds like a good friend.
And so he ate a lot. I almost feel like maybe church discipline for gluttony.
I would have eaten more, but then I started to feel ashamed because I was like, you're going to start calling me a glutton here. And then he just started calling me a glutton. And like, I was like, so there was a couple things later at night that I wanted to eat, but I was like, I can't do it because of Ben, So,
dude, I don't like Thanksgiving food. Like, it's just
I didn't have any turkey this year.
It's just not my thing.
So Tyler Clarence doesn't like Thanksgiving food or Christmas music, right?
I like Christmas
songs.
music more now that I'm not over Christmas music on a church from a week-to-week basis.
Because when you originally got here years ago, you didn't like Christmas singing.
Yeah. I don't like having to lead it, but I don't mind listening to it as much.
Turkey is the worst.
So
like, turkey's not good.
Dude, why are people hating on turkey?
No, here's the thing: is I don't even mind turkey. It's all the other crap. So like Wednesday night, we had my wife's family in town and over, so we did traditional Thanksgiving meal, and then Thursday went to my mom's house, my mom and dad's house for traditional Thanksgiving meal. And at the end of the meal Thursday, my mom looks at me and she was like, "You just ate turkey and bread, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And Katie was like, "That's what he ate yesterday too." And I was like, "That's literally all I ate was."
Did your wife make any bread?
Oh yeah,
dude.
Yeah,
she makes some crazy good sourdough bread.
Yeah, she's all about it.
My wife is one of Katie's disciples. She made
sourdough bread.
Yeah,
dude,
sourdough rolls.
Nice. So for the first year that Katie made sourdough, she made it multiple times a week and never tried it. Like she wasn't eating bread or gluten, and so we would just randomly give it to Cody. Cody would have loaves and loaves of bread.
Dude, so, she'll drop off sourdough for my wife and or something, and a couple loaves of something, and it'll legit be gone within 3 or 4 hours. Like all of our girls, yeah, it's like you got to get in there and get a piece before someone eats it all. Yeah,
so our Black Friday episode, because we record these in batches, I don't ever know what comes out week to week, and so sometimes on the Sunday morning somebody will come up to me like, "Oh, the podcast this week," and I'll have to kind of do some quick reminding what was this one, because we record a few at a time. And I had more people come up to me this past Sunday about our Goodness of God episode.
So did I.
Than any episode we've ever done.
Okay, what was the general feel? Were people like, "You were right, Andrew's an idiot"?
No. People were like, every song we sang today had first person pronouns.
I feel like I had a lot of people talk to me about that episode, and it was the general feel, including from Old Man Murch, my dad.
Okay.
The general feel was like, "Yeah, Tyler was better. You were dumb." I was just like, "What?"
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, I know. And my dad was like, "That's one of my favorite songs." And I was like, "Well, get over it." No, but yeah, it was funny because I did have multiple people. That were. I mean, I listened back to that episode. I felt like it was a good dialogue. I didn't feel like we were, taking up arms against each other.
Somebody did say to me, it makes me really sad that we're not going to sing that song anymore. And I was like, "Oh, you thought we're not going to sing that song anymore after that podcast?"
I told somebody, I'm like, legit, it could be in the set list, one of these days, and I wouldn't, even care. But it's pretty funny. So yeah, boy, that was it was intense lyrical analysis. Was that on Good Friday that we aired that episode, or Black Friday?
Yeah.
That we aired that episode?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm a big podcast listener, and not a lot of podcasts came out over the Thanksgiving day. So I wonder if us releasing that, we had more listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about what we're going to do on the Christmas holiday. We're going to keep going, or we're going to take a break and stuff, and I think that just gave us our answer. We got to keep going. All right, so here's a question that came in this week. This has been a big thing over the last couple of weeks. Hey, guys, what should we as Christians think of this? And this 12-second video was attached to it. Let's check it out. So, let's go, Brandon. This is a thing now. And I think the biggest reason we're being asked what should Christians think of this as it relates to this video, as you likely just saw on your screen if you're watching on YouTube, is that this happened inside of a church. And so this is a big mega church in San Antonio, Texas, and their founding pastor, I believe it was, is a like kind of a famous guy in that televangelist, charismatic
prosperity world. Yeah.
John Hagee, and his son, I believe, is the pastor now, Matt Hagee.
I know you follow them pretty close, right?
I do not. So they. But yeah, that happened at their church. The pastor's come out since the son and apologized and said that he was at the event, but it actually wasn't a church service. It was a political rally that the church sponsored, and he now regrets sponsoring that. But let's take it from there. What should we as Christians, or let's actually start. What the heck is this?
Yeah, Let's Go Brandon. Yeah, so a little background on it. A few months back, probably early fall, I think, I've read different things on it, but it was like September, kind of when football season started, college football season, that in different large sporting events and venues, you started to hear a chant from the crowd. And everywhere I've seen, it's like early September, and I saw it mainly linked to college football at first, but
the first thing was NASCAR is where it came from.
Well, the Let's Go Brandon came from NASCAR, but the original chant kind of broke out in a lot of large venues and these.
Wait,
kind
what
of
did
things.
that original chant say?
What's that?
What did that original chant say?
So it was F Joe Biden, only saying the word. The word.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So F standing for the F word. So. And so Joe Biden, if you're not aware, is the president of the United States. And so it started
to keep pointing to me with like these obvious things, like you're educating me.
Oh, well, okay. So
equal
pointing back and forth.
Thank you.
A little insecure about to be the church persona now that most of our church hates me. So because of that one song that I now love and sing every day. So F Joe Biden, that starts to be said around. And then so it's October 2nd, 2021, about a month into all that. And it's a NASCAR event. And there's a NASCAR driver, apparently, whose name is Brandon Brown. And he won a race or whatever. And there was a gal, actually her name was Kelly Stavast. And she's interviewing him. She's an NBC reporter. And so she said, and this was the quote, because like she's interviewing him. Oh, so how was the race? And he's like, oh yeah, we did her thing or whatever. And she's like, okay, great. And then as he's talking to her, she goes, well, and you can hear in the crowd in the background is chanting F Joe Biden. And she goes, you can hear, quote, you can hear the chants of the crowd, let's go Brandon, unquote, And so then from there, let's go Brandon becomes the euphemism that is now utilized to in place of the F Joe Biden thing. And it's funny because I had seen some of the clips and some of the, those first few weeks of September on the original chant in the different stadiums and the different bigger venues. I was even looking it up, and it said like there was a Megadeth concert in September where it broke out. And so it was not just football stadiums, but NASCAR or concerts or whatever else. But the Let's Go Brandon thing became a euphemism, and really I think two sides. Number one, a euphemism on the critique of the presidential administration, but the second thing, and I think this is kind of the reason it took off so much, is it's like it also became kind of a euphemism for the spin of the NBC reporter. Because like in the NASCAR chant, when you watch the video of the gal interviewing him, it's like they're not that far away from the crowd. And it's like they're clearly saying the original chant, And so her going, oh, and you can hear him, they're saying, let's go Brandon, kind of became a thing, like the media spinning to not make Biden look bad kind of deal, which from NBC is kind of a more normal thing. So kind of a almost like a euphemism for the legacy media, the corporate media establishment that kind of spins on behalf of the administration. So it's kind of two sides of it. And so among those people who would either critique the president or would critique the media, it's become kind of the big euphemism of the day. So there's the background. There's the historical narrative.
Yeah, so I sympathize with that euphemism of the media spinning things and not really acknowledging the reality. But I think as Christians, in my opinion, there's no place for it, especially in a church or saying it or anything like that. it's one of those things where it's like it's kind of like we're not actually saying the word, but everyone knows what we're saying, and so like that makes it okay because we're not actually saying it. But it's almost like an excuse for conservatives and even conservative Christians to like say F Joe Biden without saying F Joe Biden, and I don't think we should say that about anyone, including a president, even if you strongly disagree with him and his administration or his political party. It's not appropriate. It's not respectful. And I know some on the right would say, but yeah, they said F Trump all the time. And so it's like, okay, like that's like when my kid justifies hitting my other kid because they hit him first. Like 2 wrongs don't make a right. And we should be different in the way I think we actually lose ground to enter the political dialogue when we kind of just resort to silly things like that. Like, I just don't think it's super helpful, and I'm not like super offended by it, but I just don't think it's something definitely should happen in a church or that Christians should really be participating in. It's a funny thing. It is definitely kind of revealing how the left does often spin reporting and fits everything into their own narrative, regardless of the facts. But I just don't think it's appropriate to say that about anyone, including the president. I
haven't heard anything from this Kelly Stavast lady or whoever she is. Has she come back out and said, I knew what they were saying? Or does she come back out and be like, oh, I literally thought that? Because I just don't know.
Yeah,
like,
I don't
know anything about her.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I think back to one of the a few of the episodes we did where I got eviscerated. When we were talking about swear words and stuff like
Let's
that.
Go, Tyler.
Yeah. No, you're talking about you and the goodness of God. Me, it was King's Kaleidoscope saying the F word.
Years ago, yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. Still one of our highest listened to episodes ever. But, thinking through that, like the intent of a word was kind of one of my things there, like in that argument. It's like the intent of a word really matters. And I think that, let's go Brandon, meaning F Joe Biden, like that's intent right there, through and through. And so I don't know. I just like when I saw that first video of the church, I just thought, of course that happened. Like, of course it did. And that's disgusting. And
did you have pearls on that you were clutching at the time?
No, I did not.
The thing is, because like full transparency, I'm not a fan of Biden or what he's...
Whoa, dude. Hey, get your partisan politics out of here.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say, though, is like we have to balance this idea of like how can we disagree with someone or a certain political party
in an honoring way
and speak up for the truth, but also obey when Jesus says love your enemies, right? Yeah. And so like that's why we shouldn't say F you to anyone. That would not be loving your neighbor.
It's kind of funny that we have to
the title to the episode?
It's kind of funny that we have to like say that. You know,
but the reality,
it's like there's a video of a church that's like,
do we have to say that though? I mean, to our listeners, are they wondering that?
No, but I think there's a lot of Christians that would say, of course, I would not just say F you to someone on the street, but it's okay to say that about the president.
Yeah.
So that seems to be like a double standard that we disagree with something, and we might rightly disagree with something or someone so much that it justifies bad behavior towards them.
Yeah.
And that's just not, I think, the Christian way to do things.
Yeah, I think...
I've got a couple other things in mind, but go ahead.
Yeah. One of... if I was ever in a heavy metal band, the first verse that I would turn into a song lyric is 1 Peter 2:17.
Okay.
Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor.
Okay.
They're just like brutal sounding lyrics that you could hear somebody screaming over like a really dissonant guitar riff,
I'm feeling that. In a minor key. I would do it in a minor key.
Man, your music references today are on point. But there's, especially over the last year and a half, there's been a lot of ink spilled on like what does it actually mean to be subject to the government and all sorts of stuff like that. But I mean, I think we can clearly say that this is not honoring to governmental leadership. Right, regardless of who it is. I was thinking back through, and I mean, man, I have examples of this on the left and the right. Like I have a Facebook friend on one side and a Twitter follow on the other side, where like when one guy was president, not my president. When the next guy was president, if you're an American, he is your president. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, wait, that's the same mouth.
Both of those things.
Two things. Yeah. And I've seen it during I saw it during Obama. I saw it during Trump. Seeing it now during Biden. This is not a partisan thing. It's on both sides. But that call to honor the emperor, like, certainly should extend to, like, saying F the dude, right? Like,
when people were calling out, like, the Trump stuff and how they didn't like him, a lot of conservatives would say, yeah, but you have to respect the office. He is the president. You know, it's the same thing. It's like, well, now do you feel that way about Biden? So yeah, it's hypocritical.
Yeah, and I could see people, Ty, I could see the pushback for people being like, he's not our emperor, you know, which again, it's a different government system. One that comes to mind with me is, in the principle though, it says honor everyone, like you read there, and the emperor in that is, you know, kind of a stand-in for the governing authorities. He says be subject to the governing authorities right after that in 1 Peter 2. I'm just playing the devil's advocate for people being like, well, he's not an emperor. He's like, technically he works for me, you know? So, but the one I would say would be 1 Peter 2, 1 through 4. First of all, then, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions. So, even if we don't have a king in America, there are those who are in high positions of authority, that we as the church may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. This is good and it is pleasing to God in the sight of God our Savior, who desires all people to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. So
what's the reference there?
It's 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 4. So what I would say is, like, on that is, can you, as a Christian in good conscience, you know, it's an issue of conscience there. Would you, as a Christian in good conscience, at this, well, dude, James 3 comes to mind too. Man. Blessing and cursing out of the same mouth. So, would you, as a Christian, honestly, you gotta, we're trying to equip the church to be the church. Would you think, in good conscience, you would be saying F the president, or you know, the euphemism for it, let's go, Brandon, at a thing, at an event of some sort, and then would you also be keeping the imperative, you know, the command here for Christians to urge to prayers, supplications, intercessions, and thanksgivings for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions? Like, I doubt that you would do that in good conscience. Like, would you at the same time deride and mock and revile, and then at the same time turn around and be actually praying for that person? I don't think you would. And if you claim you would, like, you're probably lying. So I think that that's important to keep in mind. Do you pray for the president when the president is not someone you voted for? Do you, same with any public official, your governor, those kind of things. And so I think that's really important. The second thing would be Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Ephesians 4:29. So that's the other scripture that comes to mind in terms of those basic imperative commands to not, you know, be like, would your involvement in a certain chant or a certain whatever be something that's edifying and building others up, as fits the occasion, that's giving grace to those who hear it? Or would it be something that's, you know, scoring in your mind some political points? And, you know, so I think those are two things to really keep in mind as Christians: the prayer piece and also the unwholesome talk piece. So
yeah, one thing that this whole thing reminds me of is, back in college I had a buddy, and he said, and he used the letter, not the word. He's like, oh, F that. And then he goes, sorry, my bad. I don't want to say that. And I was like, say what? And he's like, my girlfriend asked me to stop using harsh letters. Is what he said. And it was like a very funny thing. It became a joke among us, like, oh, harsh letter. Yeah. But like the reality was, his girlfriend was like, you know, like, what you're intending to do. It's a
euphemism.
Here, right? Yep. And so this whole thing brings to mind that. It's like, you know what you're intending to do here. And like to hear like a 14-year-old girl say, let's go, Brandon, like that, like, it actually triggers like I just heard a 14-year-old girl say F the president, you know? And so, and
euphemisms get a life of their own, you know, and phrases like that. So you wonder,
who knows,
things become a phenomenon a little bit, you know? And so, and especially if it's more palatable to where it can become a joke, and then people will parrot the joke and maybe not know that's why we had to go back to the source. But dude, here's two other things that came to mind as I was thinking through this issue. Judges chapter 3. remember we just preached this 9-10 weeks ago, and you remember the name, and Dale Ralph Davis, one of our favorite commentators on the Old Testament, had talked about this a fair bit in his portion of Judges 3 in his book, Such Great Salvation. Was that the name of it? Judges for Davis? And he talked about Cushan Rishathaim. Do you remember this, Ben? So Cushan Rishathaim from Aran Naharaim, and he was the king of Mesopotamia, I think it was, and he's the one that Othniel delivered them from, one of the first, oppressors there in that moment. And the Cushan Rishathaim from Aran Naharaim was like a pejorative nickname that the people of Israel would have used for Cushan, which was the name of the king. But Rishathaim meant, double wickedness. And Aran Naharaim was double rivers. It was a region that was in the area that people knew about. The guy ruled over that area. And so they call them Cushan Rishathaim, double wickedness from double rivers, right? Like this is, and the commentator brought out the fact of like people when they're like chafing under rule that they do not want to submit to, or that is, whatever, that it's just so human of us to do that. And again, Judges is not in this portion of Judges is not prescribing that we do that, but it's one of those things where you think about it, the context of reality, and you go, yeah, that's what people do. That's what even God's people had that nickname for him. And again, there's no king in Israel. Everyone's doing what is right in their own eyes. We're not saying that that's the prescribed way to do it. But that was another thing that came to mind because you just preached on that, is the Cushan Rishathaim from Aran Naharaim. And yeah.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a way to disagree and dislike someone without slandering them. I think we got to find a way to do that. I mean, I guess in that, I guess that would have been slanderous, but it was also humorous. I mean, so are you defending Let's Go, Brandon? Is that what you're? Well,
dude, it's like on the To Be Church podcast here. We hit those prescriptive you in 1 Peter 1 or 1 Peter 2, and myself with 1 Timothy 1 and Ephesians 4. Those are obviously imperatives to the New Testament church, to and things we need to do. But then I thought of the Judges 3. The other one I thought of, Luke 13, where Jesus says, "Go tell that fox," when he's talking about Herod. Yeah. And Jesus obviously didn't sin, and
fox is an F word.
Yeah. Go tell that F. So go tell that fox. And so I looked that up because I was like, that's an area you think of, okay, Herod is a ruling guy over that area, and they're asking Jesus something about it, and Jesus says, go tell that fox. So I looked this up in Leon Morris's Luke commentary, and he says the fox was used by the Jews as a symbol of a sly man, but more often for an insignificant or worthless one. It was sometimes a symbol of destructiveness. And one commentator says to call Herod that fox is as much as to say he is neither a great man nor a straight man. He has, and what they mean straight is like not a righteous man, not straight in the way we would think. So that he is neither a great man or a straight man. He has neither majesty nor honor. The expression is thus contemptuous. Herod is the only person Jesus is recorded as having treated with contempt. And later we read that he wanted to see Jesus perform a miracle, and that when Jesus stood before him, the master said nothing to him at all. Jesus, and that's in Matthew 28. So when Jesus has nothing to say to a man, that man's position is hopeless. And that's Leon Morris from his introduction and commentary on Luke.
So what's the connection with Fox News then and Jesus?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Here's what I'm
going off the rails.
Go tell that Fox News.
There is obviously a place for righteous anger, right? And obviously a place for name calling, apparently. No, because Jesus calls the Pharisees brood of vipers. Yeah. That was pretty intense. Yeah. But as we've already said, God looks at the heart. And so when you say, let's go, Brandon, the intent there is, I think it's often...
It's not to call Biden towards righteousness.
Right. It's malicious. It's trying to slander. And your point about Jesus, and this same point where people say, the way we're standing up to fight is how Jesus flipped the tables.
Yeah.
Hey, everything that Jesus is recorded doing in the Gospels we're not supposed to just follow all of it.
Sure. Yeah.
He was Jesus.
Yeah.
He's the unique Son of God. Just because he did it and that's being described, it's not necessarily prescribed for us to do the same thing.
WWJD, man.
Yes. Not, yeah, okay.
I think the only way to end
In
this,
His Steps, good book, but yeah.
the only way to end this is, you said, like, sometimes people might not even know what a euphemism means when they use it. Micah Fries is a pastor somewhere in this country.
Yeah,
said,
I think I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, he tweeted the other day, like, what's your most embarrassing moment as a preacher? And so some of the comments were just great. But your thought on that reminded me of this. This guy named Trey says this, talking about Jesus' ministry and how he had a mission. He wasn't there to just Netflix and chill.
Yeah.
He said that in 2 sermons, and then his 17-year-old daughter let him know about the euphemism after he had preached that, and it was like online and everything like that.
I think that I had said that at something I was teaching at one point years ago, and I think it was Sam had come up to me after and be like, I want to use that first, And I remember thinking like, oh, whoops, and that's
so even
funny.
before the second gathering, you text Cody or whoever and said second gathering. Right. I don't know if it's going to be better,
don't
but
put this one on
it's
the
not going to have that.
Yeah. So I think the Let's Go Brandon thing, I and I actually did have time. I had an appointment that I was a little early for, so I wrote some of this stuff down, but it's a funny time in our culture. And I think there's Ben, like you were saying something earlier that I thought was good in the sense of like, score. Sweet. So, in the sense of, you said it's funny, I get it, but then at the same time you're saying, like, can you in good conscience say that? Is it honor? And all those things. And I think that's similar to the way that I look at that, in the sense of like, I get it. Like, I get people, I get the malfeasance of the media. I get the fact that there's sort of this thing. And I think what bothers me sometimes is as Christians, and you can even see some Christian thought leaders out there that are just like, oh my goodness, this is the worst thing that Christians have ever done. And at the same time, it's like there's almost a different, and I think of this even about that, like, the term conspiracy theories at times as Christians, when we're like, hey, don't believe conspiracy theories. And we utilize that term the way the corporate media would utilize it to refer to something on the right they don't agree with. They would call conspiracy theories, while propagating things that are actually conspiracy theories from the left, as true things. And so I can see Christian leaders at times, kind of the Twitter following Christian leaders that are the bigger names in some tribes that we follow, that get really righteous about policing the right, of being very palatable in our rhetoric, but don't have a similar standard for the left. And it just is. And so the 2 things the thing I put down about that is like the palatable, and I think I've said this before on this podcast, but palatable rhetoric that masks pernicious policy. That I can see that a lot of times from some Christian leaders that are like, they prefer rhetoric be palatable, even if it's masking pernicious policy, even if it's masking policy that's actually really anti scripture and anti-God, and not that every policy in a secular nation is going to be those things, but there is an institution of government that is that God has ordained for the good of people, and then the other one, and kind of from the right, when you, particularly in the Trump era, you see sloppy rhetoric that distracts from kind of sound policy. And so even if the policies are more sound, the rhetoric is sloppy. And so Christians can go, oh, we got to, and so I don't know. It's just, it's a time where there's a lot of dissension. There's a lot of fear, and there's partisanship everywhere. And so I think as Christians, we got to be prayerful. We got to be keeping these imperatives that we're commanded to do in an honoring way. And not be selective, I think, in our rage, selective in our standards, or selective in one thing that you can see as well on this is like, selective in our lament, like if you're going to lament and write your public prayer of lament when certain things happen or certain news channels talk about an event, but you're not going to publicly lament when other things, perhaps even of a greater scale, happen, because it's kind of clear you're just following a narrative, of your own of your own choosing rather than, so selective lament is another one of those things that has been bothering me within that political world of seeing Christian leaders online where you're like, you're lamenting an issue here, but you're ignoring this. And so anyway, and let's go Brandon, I think is one of these phrases that pops up when people see, like you said, narratives versus things going on, and it frustrates them. And so anyway,
we can end with this. What's the motivation or the reason in James 3 why we shouldn't curse someone with our mouth? They're made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. That's what he says. And so Joe Biden, Donald Trump, anyone else, image of God. Therefore, they do have dignity, worth, and value. And that's why we should not curse them with our words, even if we vehemently disagree with them or something they've done. So.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, if this brought up more questions than answered, feel free to hit us up and let us know. Podcast@toBeTheChurch.com is the best place you can do that. You can also do that on social media anytime @ToBeTheChurch. We would love to engage with your thoughts and your questions. Have a great week, everybody.